You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV. Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, your TV Guidance Counselor, here with another edition of the show in which we talk about the difficult viewing choices of our collective past using back issues of TV Guide magazine from my personal collection as memory joggers. This week is a very old friend of mine, Sara Faith Alterman. She has an amazing memoir that is out June 7th that you should purchase. It is called Let's Never Talk About This Again, a memoir. She's written a few books, but this is certainly the most personal. I'm very, very happy with how it came out and proud that she was able to do this. You will very much enjoy the book, so please buy that. In addition, this episode was recorded pre-pandemic apocalypse, so she was actually here in the house, so don't give me any guff about having someone in my home. This was pre-apocalypse, and we sat on the episode till the book was being released. That's how things work sometimes. You think all the TV shows you watch shot live? It's wrong. But anyway, this was done a couple months ago. But it was great to sit down and talk to Sara. She doesn't live in Boston anymore, so I don't see her as often as I used to when she did live here, which makes sense logically due to geography. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Sara Faith Alterman.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
After a decade and a half of friendship and not having you on the show, Sara Faith Alterman, how are you?
Hi, my friend. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm so happy to be here. I was thinking about how, I've been holding off on doing the show, you've been, beating down my door,
Yeah.
But it's not true. I just feel like I've been holding off because I don't know what to say.
Well, you're like, I didn't watch anything.
No, and it's not because we were, too good for TV. It was, my parents were really strict about what we sort of consumed media-wise in general, and so...
You're an only child.
No, I have a brother.
Your brother.
I have a brother. Well, the brother is... Hello, which dog are you?
All right, that's Larry.
Hi, Larry. Oh, right, Larry has a pink nose.
Larry loves the ladies.
Oh, yeah, I can see why. And you're a fluffy little man. I have a brother, which is part of the reason why I was able to watch some of the shows that I was.
I see.
You know, if my mom was, preoccupied... He was younger, so if she was preoccupied with, taking him to soccer... or something, and I was in the house by myself. Exactly. And I'm sure I did for him too, but I was, leafing through all of my options, and I realized that I had sort of 3 categories of TV, which were shows that I was allowed to watch, shows that I watched either because my parents were into them, or I was sneaking by kind of standing outside the room watching while my parents were watching. Right. And then there was stuff that I desperately wanted to watch but had no access to.
So you couldn't even go to a friend's house or at your grandma's house?
Sometimes grandma, I mean, I had limited access to grandparents too, but my Grammy, who lived in Taunton, liked the Thornebirds. Okay. And so if I would go to visit her, I would sometimes watch that. But, there was not a ton of access, and it wasn't, I mean, they were strict for very particular and bizarre reasons, but we did a lot of other stuff. And I had activities, so I was out of the house a lot, especially as a teenager. But
you were a reader.
I was a reader. I was also a drama and choir nerd, so I was always at some kind of rehearsal. So even if they were free and easy with TV, I wouldn't have had a lot of time to do it. But they were just so strict that I mean, this is why I was I don't know what I'm going to say to you on this show because I don't know how much interesting stuff I have to say, but I do.
Sure you do. Two questions.
Has
arisen.
Yeah.
One, is there anything on your list of things I desperately wanted to watch that I couldn't, that as an adult you've gone back and finally watched?
Some of the shows that my friends were really into as part of their sort of teen...
90210 Melrose Place.
Exactly. Growing Pains is one of them.
Okay.
Because people... I mean, Kirk Cameron is really problematic now, but...
He was then.
He was then in a different way. He was latently problematic or secretly.
Yeah.
But I think I don't have the same reference points for teen idols that a lot of my friends do. And so I've kind of gone back to explore a little bit. And then there's shows that my parents, especially my dad, really loved, which I do want to talk about, but one was Gimme a Break, that I've gone back to watch because I have grown to become like a massive Nell Carter fan for other reasons.
Because that's my second question is, like, parents are often very strict, but the rules are not adhered to or even thought about if it's something they like.
100%.
So it would normally be like, all the things you said I'm not allowed to watch have happened in this show, but just because you're like, I like it and I don't feel like having to deal with you.
Totally. My dad, especially. My dad, I remember I was not allowed to see a lot of movies either, so I never saw Back to the Future. I saw it as an adult, or I've seen it, but I didn't see it as a kid. But I remember, this is such a long story, but my dad was really into.
We're all about long stories.
Can I feel
Sarah,
like we're not going to talk about TV at all?
It's a podcast, Sarah.
I can talk forever. So my dad was very into jazz and just sort of contemporary.
You mean actual jazz? He wasn't like a pothead.
I mean, maybe.
You're not using it.
Unbeknownst to me. Literal jazz.
She didn't make finger quotes. My dad was into jazz.
Honestly, I did not even know that was a euphemism until right now.
Cigarettes?
Never.
Oh, really?
But I feel like I want to smoke one.
Well, yeah, like if you see, there was an infamous movie called Reefer Madness that was made as a serious anti-drug movie in the 30s and became a huge college campus sort of ironic midnight hit in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually the movie that made New Line Cinema a company.
Oh.
So Bob Shea, who is dead now but started New Line Cinema, started that company to distribute Reefer Madness at college campuses, and then he started distributing John Waters movies, and they produced Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's a whole thing.
Wow.
But they in that one they're like smoking some jazz cigarettes.
Listen here, see, I got a light up a jazz.
Yeah.
A light up a jazz is really funny. And he loved Chuck Berry and Dave Brubeck, and Chuck Berry was important. I mean, he was important, but to me, to this story, my dad loved Chuck Berry's Golden Hits, which was, a compilation of best of, and he loved the song Johnny Be Good. And so we listened to it constantly. And my parents had a record player for kind of not longer than you should, because I think there's all these arguments about why record players are whatever.
They weren't totally in vogue in the 80s.
Right.
The 90s,
Or there was like a lot of record player kind of cassette player combos.
Right.
So we had this record, Chuck Berry's Golden Hits, and we would listen to Johnny Be Good all the time. And so my brother and I would kind of like dance around in the living room. We loved it. And when I was when did that come out?
Back to the Future?
Yeah, like
85.
85. Okay. So I would have been in like first or second grade when I had this conversation. So we were at school and we were in, music class maybe, and our teacher wanted us to go around the room and name our favorite song. And so I said Johnny Be Good, and everyone was sort of blank-faced for a second, and then someone was like, oh, from Back to the Future. And I was like, oh, yeah, Back to the Future. And I was like, from what? And it was just crickets. And people were like, from fucking Back to the Future? I'm sure nobody said fucking, but...
It's the Boston area.
Yeah,
well, a little
fucking.
Yeah.
It's fucking.
It's fucking Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, you fucking kid.
The teacher might have said that.
Probably, or was
you
thinking
mean from fucking Back to the Future?
What the fuck's wrong with you? So I was like, I don't know what that is, and I got sort of educated about it. And people were like, it wasn't written by Chuck Berry. His cousin was like in the band that Marty McFly was in and heard him play
history.
it. Right. So I went home to my dad and was like, you're wrong. Chuck Berry did not write the song. Check this out about his cousin who was at like an Under the Sea dance, in the 50s. And my dad was like, asshole, like none of that is true. And then he said something about like a floppy haired Yahoo in a sport coat or something. He was talking about Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, how do you know that that's what he looked like? And I like caught my dad in the hypocrisy of telling me that I wasn't allowed to watch this garbage of Back to the Future, but he had absolutely gone to see it.
Well, how's he supposed to know it's garbage if he doesn't watch it first?
Fair. And that actually is sort of like the ultimate description of my childhood experience is my parents screening stuff for garbage, but really just enjoying it. And I guess you could argue that they were trying to make sure that something was age appropriate, but I feel like so many of my friends watched movies or listened to music or saw TV that their parents had deemed age appropriate or just, didn't care.
Right.
And my parents were like very vigilant about it. So I can't remember why we're on this tangent, but why I was able to sneak TV or watch certain things. Yeah. So especially my father, had shows that he wanted to watch, and we had a den that was kind of in the back of the house, and the layout of the hallway was such that I could, if I like stood in the hall and sort of like peeked around the doorway, like creep up on you kind of murder mystery style, I could see the TV from the doorway without being seen. And so when he was watching things, I mean, we'll get into this later, but when he was watching things that he really wanted to see, he wasn't paying attention to us. He was sort of fully focused on the television. Exactly. Especially if it was later at night when maybe I was supposed to be either doing homework or in bed. So I could just watch it from the corner. So that was one of the categories of TV, was like stuff that I was able to like sneak around and see.
Forbidden fruit TV. Do you remember what, like, are there some things that stick in your mind?
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay. Yes. Very specifically, Married with Children, Herman's Head.
Herman's Head's a weird one. I guess it's
a weird one, right? And Gimme a Break was one, even though Dad was like kind of fine with it because he was such a big Nell Carter fan because of her musical theater. Ain't Misbehavin, which continues to be one of my favorite recordings and just kind of collections of music of all time. Speaking of jazz, I'm going to do a lot of this.
I sent you the Nell Carter stuff I had, right? Did I tell you about that?
I feel...
The pajamas?
No. No.
So I've had...
How dare you hold out?
I've had some cast members give me a break on it.
I remember you telling me that. Though I don't remember anyone's name except for Joey fucking Lawrence, but the character that had the braid always, that I always envied, this like perfect French braid. What was her name?
That
one of the
was
daughters.
Julie, the one with the glasses?
She had dark hair.
Yes, yeah. She was married to Jonathan Silverman on the show.
Sure, yep.
Yeah. But the Laura Jill Miller, who played the youngest daughter, does a lot of voiceover now.
Okay.
She was from Philadelphia, and her father owned a pajama factory. That was what he did for work. And
I would have rather had that dad, honestly.
And he made kids pajamas. You know? And Nell, who was she was like a second mother to all those girls, especially Laura, because she was younger.
That makes me really happy.
Was like, why don't I get some pajamas? And her dad had pajamas commissioned for Nell from the factory, and Laura sent me the photos of it, which I'm not to share publicly, but I can probably show you, and they're amazing.
I bet. Hilarious. Yeah. Did they match the kids' pajamas?
Yes. They were the same exact ones that he had made specific for Nell.
Were they feety pajamas?
No, they're like flannelly kind of nightgowny with like a hat that goes with it.
Like a cap, like a night before Christmas kind of cap?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But
I feel like I need to just take a minute to enjoy that. I also, as it came out of my mouth, was wondering if it is feety or footy pajamas, or if you say feety or footy, if it's like a regional
pajamas.
Thing. Do you?
Yeah.
I feel like...
I've never heard feety pajamas.
I wonder... So I live in the Bay Area, California Bay Area now, but I grew up here. And I wonder if it's a regionalism or if I've just been saying it wrong this entire time. I had this moment...
They say footy there? Or feety?
They might say feety. I had a really crucial epiphany recently, wherein I have a 5-year-old son, and he, is obsessed with a lot of the stuff that 5-year-olds are, especially boys, even though we try not to be gendered about it. San Francisco Bay Area.
Yep. It's actually the law. You're not allowed to say he's a boy.
He's not. He had mandatory tutus twice a week.
You in there making a kid wear pants? I know that accent's not correct, but
it doesn't matter. I needed it. So he goes to this school that also has a summer program, and the summer program, the kids, they do like 3 or 4 different classrooms that are like focused on one kind of like subject for the summer. And so last summer he did the dinosaur classroom, and he has this insane knowledge now of dinosaurs that I have never heard of. Like if I were to say to you as a kid, what was your favorite dinosaur? Do you have an answer?
Plesiosaur.
Oh, see, that's closer to what I was going to say, which is his answer is Pachycephalosaurus. And I was like, what is that?
It's a skin condition.
It is a skin condition. It's very itchy.
Oh my God, your uncle has Pachycephalosaurus. He can't come to the game.
You need steroid cream for it, and you can only use it for 2 weeks at a time.
Insurance won't cover it.
So there's that. There's Ankylosaurus, which sounds like an ankle condition, like a foot condition. So we're reading one of his little books that he had, like one of his little leaflets for the class, and he points to what I know as a Brontosaurus.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, that's a Brachiosaurus. And I was like, no, dum-dum. That's called a Brontosaurus. And he's
my
like,
son.
No, son, idiot. that's a brontosaurus. And he's like, no, it's a brachiosaurus. And I looked it up and he was right. And I thought, oh my God, have I been calling this thing a brontosaurus incorrectly my entire adult and partially child
Do you know
life?
the story there?
I do now, but at the time it was
wasn't your fault.
Thank you. It's so rarely is not my fault that I appreciate you saying that. So I had this moment of, oh my God, I am an idiot asshole, and I've been thinking about
Is everything
this
a
dinosaur, and everything's a lie. I learned things wrong. Like, the truth that I know is not the truth to the rest of the world, right? And then, as you said, the brontosaurus was discovered to be in the same classification, or like a sub-classification as a brachiosaurus. You can explain this.
Well, so what happened was they when they found the fossils, they actually put the wrong head with the rest of the body.
No.
So then they went to brontosaurus, and then later, different paleontologists went like, "Oh, you fucked up." And they were like,
"Hey, dum-dums.
There was no dinosaur with this head. You put the wrong head on." So they put it correctly, and we're like, "No, this is it's a brachiosaurus."
So brontosaurus was like a Franken dinosaur.
Yeah, it was
by
just
accident.
like an accident. Yeah,
That's fantastic. Wait, so what did the head belong to?
some other dinosaur.
It was like
which one.
some non-related.
It wasn't even a dinosaur; it was just a coconut. No, I don't know. I don't know
It's
what.
just a really like intricately shaped rock.
Yeah,
that they put on there.
Yeah, it was just like it was like, oh, that's a head. I don't know.
Yeah, that looks
Put it on
good.
there. Yeah,
we're
fine.
in a hurry. TikTok on this grant.
Well,
Yeah.
I think of the wonderfully insightful lyrics of the Goo Goo Dolls.
Sure.
In the song "Ain't
Can't
That
wait for this.
Unusual." All we are is what we're told, and most of that is lies.
I mean, that sums up my childhood.
That's
I feel
pretty much
like.
what you just described there.
Shit. How did we get here? Feety versus footy pajamas.
Yes, that's right.
That's why we're here. Nell Carter. I feel like I can tie this all back, right? Feety versus footy. I said I asked if Nell Carter had feety pajamas, and that's what spun us into this whole thing. Okay.
But that's what the show's about.
I feel like it all comes back to Nell Carter in a lot of ways for me. So I'm glad we went and came back.
I had a complicated relationship with Nell Carter in that she's so damn charming and also terrifying. And when you rewatch that show, she's a jerk.
Yeah.
Like, most of the problems are just her being an asshole.
Yeah, which is why I was like so relieved to hear
Yeah.
that she was like a second mother to all those children.
Oh, yeah. By all accounts, she was just like a saint.
Yeah.
But like, she was so mean to her best friend.
Oh my God, that's right.
It was like she literally like smacking her in the head and throwing her in a closet.
People
Like,
put
she
up with it because
but
she was
it was so
magnificent.
funny. And that was in the context of the show. Like, she was just plus we all love Dolph Sweet.
Oh yeah.
Who was a musical theater guy.
They both were.
But he seems like not an actor.
There's so many musical theater people that have crossed over into television. I mean, it's happening now. And one of the shows I want to talk about is Perfect Strangers.
Yeah.
Mark Lynn Baker was and continues to be like a musical theater genius who I've recently become reacquainted with. We will get there. But
Yeah.
Nell Carter had the voice of like a nasally angel.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of my experience with her was the Ain't Misbehavin recording. And then later she played Miss Hannigan in a production of Annie, which is like mwah, chef's kiss. Which you can't really see on a podcast, but like I did it.
The noise made it. Actually,
like
the weirdest thing for the listener was it actually made a word balloon.
Well, check it off my bucket
She's
list.
real good, yeah.
I mean, to this day, I feel like a physical response to hearing her sing some of the songs on Ain't Misbehavin. And so, yeah, I mean, my dad was very into musical theater, jazz, as I mentioned, not jazz cigarettes.
Do you have a preference of Gimme a Break theme songs? So there's the first one, which is the piano, bum, 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 bum. It's much more musical theater. She's like, give me a break, I sure deserve it. And then they redid it as like a super 80s one. It was like, give me a break, yeah, yeah.
Oh, definitely the first one.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I could watch this all day or listen
Just
to
me
this all day.
singing various theme songs.
It makes me really happy. And I'm curious to hear your take on later theme songs that were rewritten. The first one for sure. For sure. And so Dad was really into her and into that. And so I feel like if I had been caught sneaking that, it would have been fine. He would have appreciated my appreciation for
The
her.
concept of a kid get in trouble for it, like, you better not be watching Nell Carter in there.
Well, I actually imagine there are a lot of families where the dad was like super racist.
For different reasons.
Yeah, for different reasons. But so if I'd been caught watching that, it would have been okay. But there were other shows like Married with Children. Oh my God, my father probably would have thrown the television away.
Another musical theater guy, the guy who played Steve, was a huge musical theater guy.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why he left the show. He wanted to go back to musical theater.
I forgot about that. What was his name? Mark something?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the actor. But yeah, he didn't think that show was gonna. He was on a sitcom before that called "It's Your Move" with Jason Bateman, which was essentially a spinoff of Silver Spoons, but not officially.
Okay.
And then right from that went to Married with Children, thinking this isn't going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And was on it for 3 seasons. So now he's out of New York for like 5 years, and he's like, I'm a musical theater person.
Yeah, and
so
I'm never going to get to do that on the show.
Yeah.
And then he was replaced by a floppy-haired guy.
Yes, he was.
What was
playing
that?
Jefferson Darcy.
Jefferson Darcy, that's right.
Who was the man who's known as TV show Grim Reaper.
Oh, really?
Ted
Because
McGinley.
his when he appears on a show, it tanks?
Yes, or they add him when they're really flailing. So there's like maybe 10 shows that Ted McGinley was added to in the final days. Happy Days, Love Boat, Married with Children. There's a ton. So it's kind of a running joke that
funny.
Ted McGinley is like the TV show Grim Reaper.
That's funny. Well, so I remember sneaking like episodes here and there, right? So I could not tell you storylines of that show if they existed, like bigger story arcs. But
There were no storylines in Married with Children.
I mean, I just remember it was like nudie mags and like Peg wanted to have sex, and then like Bud somehow got beautiful women in the house. Like I remember those things.
There's a lot of jokes about Bud jerking off.
Yeah.
And Kelly being dumb.
Yeah, dumb and hot. The episode that sticks out in my mind because I was so like agog was there was an episode where she was in like a dance recital and she danced to Fever. Mm-hmm. It was like some maybe like contemporary in high school,
Yeah.
and what was at the time a contemporary recording of Fever, because the recording of that is it Julie London? Is it Rosemary Clooney?
It's Julie London, I think.
It might be Julie London, or it
I
might
prefer
be
the Elvis version or the Cramps version.
Okay, understood. Understood. But why can't I remember who it was? No, it wasn't. It was someone is screaming in their car
That's
right now,
every
correcting
episode.
me. I'm gonna have to look this up. But she did like a very sexual dance to a song that my parents, specifically my father, had introduced me to, and I remember just being like, "This doesn't feel right in my brain." So I remember that really well. I remember the episode where they were trying to go away for the weekend. I think it was Labor Day weekend, and they just got like stuck in the car, and they spent the whole
They're in
weekend
traffic,
sitting in the
the
car.
whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah, which is, I really do criticize that show a lot because it's so over the top, and I often call it poor face because it was, as much as I love blue collar shows, it was like really just making it like shitting on these people in such a cartoonish way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a hateful show. But that is one of the ones I remember because it's a pretty ingenious bottle episode where they're just stuck in traffic the whole time.
And I don't know why that in particular sticks out to me. I think it could be not because these episodes had a huge impact on me, but because they were just the ones that I happened to catch.
Well, I mean, but also if you had seen sitcoms and it sounds like you're early on sort of learning how stories are structured because you became a writer later, obviously. When you see something that's unusual and works, it tends to stick in your mind more too. So if you see a thing like a bottle episode like that, or if something breaks the fourth wall, you're going to go, oh, you can tell stories in that way too. Or the Fever one obviously speaks for itself.
Yeah. Peggy Lee. It was Peggy Lee.
That's right. Yeah.
And that is what someone is screaming in their car right now. Hopefully. Hopefully someone
Peggy
knows that.
Lee Bundy.
Peggy Lee Bundy.
Yes.
Peggy.
So did your parents ever find out that you snuck these?
I don't know. I imagine not. Because they would have done something to.
But I'm always like,
stop that immediately.
I'm not a parent, obviously. Thank God.
Well, you're a dog parent.
Right, but they can watch whatever they want. But I feel like I would know if a kid was like, if I'm watching TV and a kid was like sneaking, I feel like I would know. Like I have this feeling like parents always know.
When you're hanging out.
Could you imagine if you were sitting in your living room and your kid is watching? Like, don't you feel like you'd know?
I do feel like there's an eyes in the back of your head thing that happens when you become a parent, but my dad, he might have willfully ignored that.
Right. Do you think he was like, I told her not to. I told him not to. I've done my job, and hey, whatever.
Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. My dad was kind of an oblivious guy, and so, in a lot of ways, and so I feel like my mom would have known, but my mom was such that she would have absolutely put a stop to it. Dad was the kind of person who had a very low tolerance for difficult conversation, and something that would have sparked a difficult conversation would be if I saw like a sex scene on TV and was like, what's happening with their body parts? So he would have, like, there were times...
He wasn't trying to spare you, he was trying to spare him.
Yeah, from having to explain what was going on. There was a time, Ken, there was one instance where we were watching some movie and the kissing scene came on, like a heavy kissing scene, and this was pre-remote control days, because I was born in 1979, and they weren't very into technology, so we didn't have cable for a long time. We certainly didn't have a TV that had a remote control.
And for people who don't know, Sarah's father was Ted Kaczynski.
That's right. And it's been a lot to process, and I feel like, it's just hard for me to explain to people that I still love him, even though he did some terrible things.
He's good at chopping wood.
It's not true.
No, it's not true, buddy.
But we had a TV that had 2 knobs on it, right? The top was...
The UHF and the VHF?
Yes, and the top was like channel 2, channel 3 for the VCR. It was like 5, 7, 25, 38, 56. So the top was like 2, 3, 7. You know what I'm saying?
Single digits and double digits.
That's right.
Yep.
So, oh my God, is that what it was?
Yeah, UHF stations were above channel 9.
Thank you for teaching me so much.
Networks
in general.
Were single stations.
Oh, yeah.
Numbers.
I mean, over the course of our friendship, I feel like you've taught me a lot, but right now you've taught me.
Most by cautionary example.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah,
Listen, we bring lots of magical things to each other over the course of the last 15 years. But I think, oh, right. So we were watching, it was either a movie or a show. I cannot remember, but we did not have a remote control.
And it wouldn't have been that racy because it was either edited for TV or a TV show.
Exactly. And if it was a movie, they would have done a really diligent job of screening it. So there was like a kissing scene that came on that was like a little heavy, and he literally leapt out of his chair to try and change the channel, but he just couldn't. I don't remember if the knob came off, but he couldn't change it fast enough. He unplugged the TV, just straight fucking unplugged it. And so he was very aware of content that he did not want to have to talk about, or he felt uncomfortable sitting next to us while he was watching. And so he would have absolutely put a stop to it if he thought I was sneaking something that was like...
But did that make you go more, oh, I gotta see that now?
Oh, yes. And there's a whole... I mean, I feel like that's what I'm building my life and career on right now, because I have a book coming out. I mean, I'm sorry to be this asshole.
No, plug it.
I have a book coming out that's a memoir of my relationship with him and his relationship to difficult conversations.
Because he's since passed away.
He's since passed away, and he was secretly writing novelty sex books while all of this was happening, which is I can talk about that for a while.
Which your mother knew.
My mother knew, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, they were successful. They paid for a house, you know what I mean? So she knew, and I think was uncomfortable, but was like, well, college is taken care of because of this horrible book.
What was his cover job?
He had a day job. His company developed and marketed seminars, executive education seminars.
Okay.
So it was come get an executive MBA in a week.
Was that one of the books?
For Harvard. He wrote books on that subject.
That was one of the sex books. Come get it.
It was not come get your MBA, baby.
The book, let's never talk about
Massive
this again.
Boner alert.
June 9th it's out?
What's that? It's out June 9th. Yeah, thank you. I can't believe I just came up with Massive Boner alert as an alternate acronym for MBA. I feel good about that. Again, we're doing a lot.
Yeah, you got to do a sequel.
I mean, you and I can co-write it.
Yes.
That'll be our series.
But he made it a thing and it didn't have to be.
That's right. He made it a thing and it didn't have to be. I think a lot of the memories I have of those shows are less about the TV and that being sort of formative for me, and more about the feeling of I'm getting away with something. I'm watching this show that I'm not supposed to watch, and I'm going to file this whole experience in my brain as something special because I'm doing a thing that I'm not supposed to be doing.
It makes you remember it forever.
Yep.
It says, once you get something as the forbidden fruit, it's every kid I know whose parents were really strict about what they could watch developed a thing.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yep.
And and I understand that parenting's hard. You don't know. I think you have to make a risk reward of, do I risk that them seeing this is going to make them worse off? Well, I won't risk it. They can't see it and then we'll be fine. And then, the unintended consequences, who knows? Yeah. But I don't know anyone whose parents were very strict about what they watched who was thank God.
Yeah, I know, Right? They really protected me from the world.
I just never was interested in it.
Yeah.
It just didn't work.
It's like that with me for television and movies now, but also I have like unhealthy habits around things like eating because my parents were, I'm not in like a disordered way, but my mother was really strict about sweets, like sugar cereal, cookies, all that stuff. And so now I love those things, but I eat them in secret.
Yeah.
And not like
shameful.
alone. It's shameful eating. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm alone, like locking myself in a bathroom and doing it, but like I'll buy like Fruit Loops or something and I will put them, I'm not like hiding them necessarily from my husband and children, but I'm like putting them in a place where they might not look. And if they look, it's okay, but they might not.
You treat it like having a glass of scotch.
No, because I will do that openly in front of my children.
How most people would have a glass of scotch.
Fair. I feel like whatever.
Everybody goes to bed. I'll get it out of the cabinet where it's hidden in it. You know, like I'm not an alcoholic, but I just me time.
What's so interesting about that is our liquor, and we're not huge drinkers, but we enjoy like really good scotch or tequila or whatever. It's like more easily accessible to my children than the sugar cereal is. Like we keep it in like a low cabinet. It's like not a big deal, but the Fruit Loops are like away. The other thing is I can open a cookie jar and still do in silence, perfect silence, because that stuff was so off limits to us. So now, and I feel guilt about it.
Did you have it in the house though?
Yes, my mother was like a very passionate baker, so she would make these like. We had this massive. I think she was a little bit of a sadist. She had a massive glass, like apothecary jar that I'm sure she bought at TJ Maxx. And it was, transparent glass.
So you could
and
see
she would make chocolate chip cookies and like fill it to the brim, and we were not allowed to eat them. So like occasionally.
Who ate them then?
I don't know. My dad, maybe. I'm not really sure.
So she trained you to be a cookie burglar.
I mean, 100%. Like the cookie. I feel like the Hamburglar, but like
You're like the Cookie Crook from Cookie Crisp cereal.
I believe you. Another thing that was off limits for me. When we were on vacation, I could eat Frosted Flakes sometimes, which is like the worst of the sugar cereals.
Would you get the little
boxes? Yeah.
Those little sampler packs, which I can and often do buy whatever horrific child cereal that I want.
I mail them to you
all the time. Sarah mails them to me.
Yeah.
But whenever I see those little boxes, I get so vacation happy.
Yeah. It's like, a little treat. A little packable treat.
There's also just like such a surge of power as a kid to be like, I can have any of these 10 varieties that I want. We don't just have one kind.
Well, I feel like because kids are at the mercy a lot of times of their parents' choices.
Yeah.
And so to have this like buffet of options all of a sudden and have the power to choose the cereal that you're going to eat in the morning because it's just in your house, I feel like was incredibly significant.
There's something also just like viscerally pleasing as a kid of something being small.
Yeah, it's like more like your size.
Yeah, because you're like, I don't feel like I got this. There's like a really weird, just like biological thing about it where you're just like,
That's so interesting. Yeah, miniature things, I think we all still think they're cute. Like miniature cupcakes, right?
Yeah.
Or like teacup poodles or...
But they're easy for kids to like feel...
Can you imagine eating a teacup poodle?
A teacup poodle?
I think about it.
Wouldn't be a lot on there.
I think about it.
Well, you'd drink it.
No, you would drink something that's in it.
Yeah, you'd have to put something in a poodle. Yeah, you know what? I've never seen a poodle teacup.
Really?
I've seen like coffee mugs, but like a full-on teacup, like a fancy teacup, like a poodle.
That is a massively missed opportunity.
Yeah, you do poodle teacup.
Let's table this for
absolutely.
offline because can you tell I live in Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Let's table this for offline and we can talk about disruption.
I'll ping you on this and we'll dat the RAM.
We're going to change the world.
Yep.
Change the world.
Well, there's a tea set right next to it.
Oh, yeah, I know. From Direct Dead Fred, which I could talk about forever. I remember they still exist, the mini candy bars. It was Hershey's. It was always like the crackle, the dark chocolate.
The signature ones,
The ones with the peanuts in them.
Special Dark. That was the only time you could get Special Dark.
Yeah, and there was something about those that was really, special, for lack of a better word. And it's the same, like these little... Maybe it's because you're allowed to have more of them at once as opposed to just one thing.
So you want to, like, gorge? Like...
I mean, I always wanted to gorge.
Well, yeah, but is that the thrill of it? Like, I can have 20 of these because they're smaller.
Maybe. I don't know, but you're right in that... As a kid, especially when there's like a lot of small things, it's like very exciting because it's unusual.
Kids are all about quantity versus quality. Like that's where if you're sneaking something, like seeing 10 episodes of a TV show versus like one movie, you're like, yeah, I totally got away with that.
I feel like I do tend to binge TV, and I understand that binging is a thing now, but even before...
No, you invented it.
I did, which I feel like I don't get enough credit,
That's
and
true.
I feel bitter about
They
it,
used to
honestly.
call it Alterman.
I know. What the hell? Can we get that back? You have Twitter followers. Let's just put it out in the world. I Alterman. I mean, that used to mean something different when I was in my 20s. But anyway, I feel like I consumed, as an adult, consumed television the same way I would like consume cereal, which is like kind of in private as much as I could at a time, because my parents conditioned me to think that like this is a super special thing, whether it's a cookie or TV show, that you can only, and I'm in therapy, I don't want you to worry about me, but you could only have every once in a while at our discretion, so you better fucking appreciate it. And now I'm like, watch it all, eat it all.
The door's open, I'm never going to get this chance again.
Exactly.
No, absolutely. It makes you impulsive and it makes you obsessive.
Exactly.
But to make you feel a little bit better, my parents were the exact opposite in that I could watch whatever I wanted, to the point where they actually probably showed me things I shouldn't have seen.
Really?
And my dad had a shopping budget every week, and he spent the whole budget, and he had to spend it to the penny. And so he would, if things were on sale and he was $10 under, he spent $10 on what was on sale. So he'd buy all kinds of junk food, like whatever. So the house was always stocked with garbage. So I ate just all kinds of crap, watch whatever I wanted, and I am still exactly the way you've just described. I'm impulsive and get obsessive, and so it doesn't. Both approaches cause the same result.
I mean, we're all fucking up our kids in some unique way, and I think about that. I mean, I don't want to go too deep into a parent tangent, but relevant to this podcast, I feel like I'm trying to strike a balance between figuring out what's age appropriate for my kid and encouraging him to watch new stuff. And he's very much, I have two kids, one is one, so none of this matters. But the 5-year-old, he's very much a creature of habit. And I think a lot of 5-year-olds are. And he does not want to watch movies. He does not want to watch new television shows. He just has like his 5 core shows.
He knows what he likes. That's what kids do, though. They like
which is great. And it's like, I'm glad that you like things that are educational but fun, and teach you about like music and math and all that. But I am conscious of trying to kind of steer him in the direction of watching fun things that are still age appropriate, but are outside of his comfort zone, right?
You want to make him cool.
Obviously. I want to give him all the opportunities to be cool that I never had.
Yeah.
And so, I feel all the time like I'm going to fuck him up in some way. Hopefully it is not the same way in which my parents fucked me up, but I do feel like their kind of limited access, like in an obsessive way, to things like movies and food, I want to avoid that as much as I possibly can, but without going the other, no offense, but like without going the other way.
I'm offended.
I know.
So
I can
please,
leave if you want.
This is over.
I'm taking the muffins I brought for you, and I'm leaving. And the tote bag. Thank you too.
She brought me a tote bag full of muffins.
I did.
They're PBS muffins. That sounds like a weird, like detective show from the 80s. Like, have you seen PBS muffins?
It does. Or a burlesque dancer.
Yes. Or it's a detective who's a burlesque dancer named PBS muffins.
You need to write this down and add it to our list of ideas.
Yes, we're so wealthy on all our ideas. But I will say that, one, it makes sense that all kids love to repeat the same things over and over again. And I think it's because when you're a kid, everything's new. There's nothing consistent, and chaos is everywhere, and it's terrifying. So when you can have the smallest amount of consistency or, comfort with a thing like that, you jump on it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and I don't mean to disparage your parents, but I would say
that's all I want to do.
My feeling is most of the rules that you were saddled with were about them, not about you,
100%.
and for their best interest or convenience instead of yours. Whereas it sounds like, and I've observed, everything you do with your kids are for them.
Yeah.
And so even if those can cause unintended consequences, I think they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
They're in very different realms, and it does have a totally different effect.
I fucking hope so, man.
Yeah.
I think all I can do is the best I can do, right?
Yeah.
And try to be honest and open, and
if it doesn't work, you just have them put down.
or give them away.
Yeah.
I feel like there's lots of people out there who want a kid who's already potty trained, like I've done the hard
and
work.
if not, like parts.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's good. It's like a car, right? Like I would get more for the parts.
Yeah.
This took a dark turn. I don't mind. I don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's just Shanghai 'em.
What's interesting is that, I mean, maybe this is not interesting to you, but kids in general, kids today have access to television in a way that was totally different from us, right?
Yeah.
Like he can watch, if I let him, 10 episodes of a show called Peg Plus Cat in a row and not have to watch anything else because he has the freedom to choose the things that he wants to watch when he watches them. And we, in theory, I did not, but friends had access to like videotapes that they could watch over and over again. But as far as TV goes, he's not at the mercy of programming, of weekly programming, daily programming, what have you. And so, you know, he very well could live in a television bubble.
He's actively involved in programming to himself, which is good and bad, because I think that, you know, so many things I love that sort of formulated my interests in the endeavors that I've approached are because I stumbled on things, or because I was forced to watch something because somebody else wanted to watch it and I never would have watched it and then ended up liking it.
Yeah.
So in that respect, maybe it's not great, but at the same time, to your point, one of the reasons that these things stick in our brain forever is because we went, well, I don't ever know when I'm going to see this again.
Yeah.
So if you grow up in a world where you know you can see whatever whenever, they're not maybe necessarily going to occupy that space in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is probably a good thing.
In a weird way, you can liken it to GPS. Stay with me.
No, I know where you're going with this.
I feel
pun
like
intended.
Before... let's go there together.
Yeah.
I feel like before GPS, before I embraced it, and before certainly I had it on my phone, I was living in Boston. I lived here for a long time, and I knew Boston like the back of my hand because you get lost all the time and you're constantly exposed to little streets and you're sitting in traffic, right? Because you don't have this box that's telling you, especially now with smart GPS, you know, oh, make this right turn and this weird left in the series because there's an accident, and people don't get lost anymore. And you could
are they always lost?
I mean, mentally and emotionally, absolutely. But like geographically, it's less common. And so I feel like in a weird way, it's analogous to like binge watching television, because you have this machine or this system that delivers you what you're looking for. And you're not necessarily looking for anything that is not in your sphere, like that you don't want, right? So, you know, GPS will serve you with the most efficient way to get somewhere and with how to, you know, circumnavigate the traffic. You know, streaming services will serve you just what you're looking for, and you're never going to like get lost and stumble upon something new, right?
But you never necessarily know where you are.
That's
like,
true.
We've outsourced our knowledge.
I feel like we're high, and I'm just like, yeah, dude, man, it's like GPS.
And like, what if CAT spelled dog?
Oh my God, pass me that jazz.
No, but it's true. It's true. Like you don't have to hold on to knowledge now if you don't want to. You have to actively want to have it in your head because you don't need to. And I tell a story a lot where I drove to a show with a comic who's younger than us on the Cape, and he was driving, and I was like, don't need the GPS, don't need the GPS. And he like couldn't understand, like, because I knew how to get there, and he sincerely goes, how do you know how to get places? Oh, and I was like, you go there and then you remember. And it was just, but you know, it seems weird. I don't know if it's bad. I don't think we'll know if it is or not. You know, people don't need to hold knowledge in their heads anymore because they can look it up whenever. And they'll probably always have access to that. You know, it'll be interesting to see how that affects the generation of people who grew up like that and what kind of art and media they make.
Oh, that's interesting.
If they make it with that in mind, or sometimes things are cyclical and they'll go back, you know, that I'm curious about to see where that goes.
Well, I imagine there's pressure too, especially shows where they all get dumped on a streaming service at once.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of pressure to deliver a very compelling story that can be consumed in a matter of hours, right? As opposed to like a sitcom, let's say, that was maybe delivered once a week and you sort of had breathing room to kind of figure out, here's where we want the characters to go or the story to go based on audience response. I feel like with streaming, you have to maybe not be confident in you're programming or confident in your character arcs or whatever, but you need to be able to just dump it all out there at once.
Well, it's definitely changed the way that both of us write. You're obviously actually do it, but it's true. It's changed the way that show creators create storylines, and they do have to make something that has an arc, and it needs an arc, and you didn't always need to not an artificial arc, but you would get arcs in stories and even sitcoms and character arcs that sort of evolved naturally.
Yeah.
But they weren't necessary. And they're necessary now. And sometimes that's to the detriment of a show because it's unnatural.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, there are shows that I really appreciated that didn't binge. So like when Twin Peaks: The Return came on, it was once a week. And I was reminded that when Twin Peaks first aired, that was an important part of it because it was a communal watching. You'd watch it with your friends or you'd discuss it the next day. You'd sit and think about it for a week.
And everyone's on the same page because they're able to watch it
at the same time. They have to.
Yeah.
And you think about it for a week and you anticipate what's going to happen next and what's the next thing. So when it does finally come on, you're way more engaged. You're kind of noticing stuff more instead of the way that sort of cliffhangers are presented now, and the stakes seem lower. I feel like it's a little bit harder to get invested, and because of that, so many more of the shows, the storylines or the plots end up being too much. Like too much bad happens or too awful because they need to sort of supplement that.
Well, cliffhangers don't exist and that there's no power to them anymore because you can immediately launch into the next episode. I mean, with a lot of television, not all of it. I feel like so much of the TV that is kind of delivered in a package of episodes at once is like just a long movie, a really long movie.
Yeah. And things like sitcoms suffer, I think, because you know, the nature of those was that you look forward to sort of that comfort food of they're going to be there at this time every week and this time, and it's consistent. And it's like that thing that kids do. They want to watch the thing they know. And so, you know, people do binge old sitcoms, but I think they're more ones that they grew up with. They're not new ones. Because it's not designed for that.
I think it's funny to hear you say that there are some shows that are still aired weekly that people find comfort in. And again, like talking about my kids, but my husband and I don't get out in the way that we used to. And so much of this sounds sad, but I don't mean it to, so much of our relationship and our sort of like dating, quote unquote, now is like our routine of the shows that we watch. You know, it was like Good Place on Thursdays. Now it's The Magicians on Wednesdays. It was Mr. Robot on Sundays. So it's kind of like we have these dates to watch a show. And I feel like in a way I'm preferring that now because I know, okay, I have this like special little hour to look forward to before we pass out.
But that's important. I think we'll always need that. Like even in a world of streaming, you'll always need that because it's important to have a date with something, to look forward to something and to have a consistent thing. But it's also why the shows that I see that become more pop culture phenomenons now that are surprising that everybody watches, like Drag Race, where it's like my dad will watch it or that sort of thing. Where, they're good fun shows, but it's because the only kinds of shows that you can have cliffhangers like that you have to watch day and date because there's a winner. They're like sporting events. So you need to watch it then to reveal what happens. And so that's why we've grown into those and why they tried to make those live musicals a thing, because really the only thing that still works the way it always did is sports. So they're trying to unlock that format or that magic with other things
for people that don't watch sports or think or are interested in like a sports like competitive angle
The Bachelor,
to entertainment.
So you end up getting that sort of stuff.
I mostly watch cooking competitions, and there are some that are, you know, Netflix. I think you introduced me to Nailed It.
Oh, I love Nailed It.
I love it so much, but that's another case where you can just go episode to episode. But things like Top Chef, you know, anything that has anything that has a competition element to it.
Or even like seeing the Great British Baking Contest really take off in America because it's the same thing. You're waiting, you're seeing these characters, like who's going to win. Like it's that sort of thing that's really being showcased inadvertently because of the way that stuff is delivered now.
It's like the suspense of it. And in a way, even though each one of those episodes wraps up in a neat little package because you do get a winner, there is the long game, literal long game, like this arc of the season where you're waiting for the ultimate winner. So in that regard, I feel like so many of those competition shows, not Chopped because those are one-off, but you know, things like Top Chef, they embody the sitcom watching experience because you are waiting to see where the season is ultimately going to land you, and it sort of like unfolds in these little like digestible, for lack of a better word, nuggets.
It's the difference. It's the difference between watching a movie in 10-minute chunks once a day, which would not work. It's not satisfying, and having a satisfying conclusion that wants you to watch more, which is a really weird balance to try to strike as like someone who creates those things, because you want someone to feel satisfied so that they don't feel like they didn't get what they were there for, but also to be like, well, I gotta hang around.
Exactly.
That's tough.
It's a weird balance of like satisfying someone just enough and enticing them to keep going.
Yeah.
Because if you drop the ball on making one sort of isolated episode or chapter interesting, then people are gonna be like, well, fuck this. I don't care.
And it makes shows like Doctor Who or Supernatural or shows that I enjoyed difficult to watch for long periods of time, because every season they have to have such a huge arc that it's like every year the world is uncreated and saved.
Yeah.
Every year, like there's
and
no
you're
stakes.
gonna save it.
Yeah, there's no stakes anymore. So it's difficult. But you know, there are very smart people who come up with stuff that works. Like we've been watching The Good Wife, which is amazing.
Oh yeah, Good Wife or Good Fight?
Good Wife. We started watching it because of The Good Fight, but Good Fight, same thing. Like they managed to do amazingly satisfying episodes that have callbacks, and then these arcs per season that are natural. They're not like some who's this bad guy now?
Who's this fucking bozo?
Yeah, exactly. So you didn't go night by night because you had a few issues.
I went night by night, kind of. So, but the interesting thing, and I just realized this, so it's entirely possible that this programming is very different from what it would normally be, but I picked July 4th through 10th, 1992. So, I mean, I don't know if there like holiday programming was
some
different.
Some of it would be, but it's summer vacation, so you can watch TV all day. Were you left in the summers? Were you left home alone?
No. Never. I was almost never home alone. Well, so what's really interesting about this is July 4th was my father's birthday. And so some of the programming on the 4th, I feel like, was maybe special programming. And it like really jumped out to me. And I feel like, oh, we probably would have watched this together. But I was very rarely home alone. And so, like I was saying earlier, a lot of the TV I was able to consume that I wouldn't have been allowed to was like if my parents were driving my brother to a thing.
Yeah. And you rush to the TV and be like, I got 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Just enough for, you know, some kind of sitcom. 1992, I was 12. At this point, I was 12. I turned 13 later in the year, but I would have had a little more freedom. Oh, I also watched a lot when I was babysitting.
Yes.
Which was really key.
Other people's houses?
Yes, other people's houses. So when I was like 15, 16. So that... And, you know, that's a few years later, so I guess we can talk a little bit about that. But at this point, I would have been left alone long enough for, like, maybe my mom went to the grocery store. But my parents very rarely did things without us. And I don't know if that was because they wanted to spend time with us, or they just wanted to control us, or they didn't have anything to do. But
or they didn't want to pay for a babysitter.
Probably that was part of it, too.
That was my parents' thing.
And so I feel like the things that I have on this list are things that either, again, I would have been allowed to watch or, you know, was watching because my parents were interested in it.
Which is kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right. Well, there were things I was allowed to watch that they didn't want to see, like any sort of like kid shows.
Right.
But then there were things that we would have maybe all watched together as a family.
So what do you got?
Okay. So Saturday, July 4th, 1992 would have been my father's birthday. But the things that stuck out to me the most were, am I supposed to go in time order?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does it matter? Okay. So in the morning, I know Saturday morning cartoons were a big deal, and I'm sure that I watched some, but there aren't any that stick out in my mind. I would have been watching The Frugal Gourmet,
which is Jeff Smith.
That's right. Who is not a convicted, but an accused pedophile.
Yes. My father, who is the level of homophobic that a man in his 60s in the Northeast it would be.
Fair.
Not that people who are pedophiles are always gay, but this guy happened to be. Loved The Frugal Gourmet. So it was his hero. He went to go see him do like live cooking demonstrations. And So when that happened, he lost his shit. Yeah. And to this day, every year for well, not every year, I guess I kind of stopped, but I would go to a used bookstore and buy one of the Frugal Gourmet cookbooks and give it to him for Christmas.
And he would get so angry.
Yeah, because like when it happened, he like got them all off the shelf. And so I'm like, oh,
more things to burn. More things to burn. Yeah. That's really funny. Well, my mom was an enthusiastic cook and baker, as I mentioned, and a sadistic one. But she had a huge collection of cookbooks, like hundreds of cookbooks in the kitchen, like sort of in piles. And she read them for pleasure, and she cooked a ton. She always made way too much food for everybody, and she would make like a full course dinner every night, like salad, a main, a couple of sides, a dessert. She did not work outside the home, so she had time to do that kind of stuff. And it was just like her passion and her hobby. And so a lot of the things that we were allowed to watch were cooking shows,
which there weren't a lot of.
There was like Julia Child, Frugal Gourmet, Yan Can Cook was a little bit later. Martin Yan.
They were all PBS.
It was around the same time. They're all PBS.
All PBS shows. Yep. There was almost. I can't think of any non-PBS cooking shows.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think you're probably right. Or there would be like cooking demonstrations on like daytime talk shows, probably. Yeah, they would do a segment.
I'm Mr. Food. Today we're making hot dogs.
Food stuff. Making a hot dog. Yeah. I mean, that's what you can make in 2 minutes, right? Yeah, I feel like it was much later that food television became its own phenomenon, but we would be watching the Frugal Gourmet, and I remember his face, and I remember he always had a green apron on.
His voice always went like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was
you could, of course, do whatever you want.
It's like I'm there. It's like I'm there right now. So we would watch him, and then I remember when he was accused of, and like I said, he was not convicted. He settled out of court for a lot of these. He had like an
assistant who was like 17 or 16. It was something.
But there were lots of other men who came forward who were like, yeah, when I was a teenager, this definitely happened.
Okay.
So, I mean, I feel like this is taking a dark tone, but I guess I point this out
Julia
because
Child never touched nobody
that we know of. She was just doing her patriotic duty as like a government spy.
Hired killer.
Yeah. I hope that's true. I hope that's true. It was just all a friend. But I think for me, not many other people, maybe your father, but for me, is I just
thought of her when she murders someone and be like, that's child's play.
With a knife. Yeah. So it is very much the Chucky of the kitchen. She's a Chucky of the kitchen.
This guy's been deboned.
That's good. What other cooking things? I have nothing. I'm just imagining her
with a
rolling
pin. He was murdered by spatchcock.
Oh, I butterflied him.
Yeah.
I'm imagining her yielding, using a rolling pin, to sort of beat people to death.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Especially vegans. No, it doesn't matter. Sorry, not to disparage vegans, but she was very into butter.
Yes.
So for me, and maybe your dad, and maybe some other people, and it was not a New England specific show, was it? I always think of it as.
I mean, like Julia Child was produced here. The Victory Garden was produced here. Same with like America's Test Kitchen, Cook's Country. Those are all produced at WGBH. But no, they weren't. Okay. But they always aired like Saturday afternoon. Yeah, like that's right, kind of before dinner.
Exactly. Yeah. To get you to whet your appetite. Yeah. So I remember feeling, and I know my mother felt in particular, devastated when we learned this about him. And there's so many other men who now and recently there have been some devastating revelations that they are not the people that we thought they were.
And that was rare.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't rare that it was a thing. It was rare that we heard about it and that it made any impact. And I think in his case, it was only because he was gay.
Was he gay? I mean, he was married to a woman, but I mean, I suppose
he was.
I mean, of course, there's plenty of gay people who are married.
Yeah. But I think that's the reason that they didn't protect him.
Yeah.
Whereas they would normally, if it was
covering
women
up,
or even underage women, like they're just like, hey, that's what happens.
Yeah.
But it was like weird, like he's a deviant kind of thing.
It was like, I said latent, but I meant blatant homophobia that drove that. But again, he wasn't a pedophile because he was gay. Those are two different.
Yeah. But that's why it became a scandal. Yeah. I think that would be my theory.
Well, all I know is that it was crushing for everybody.
Absolutely.
Because he was the guy who sort of like welcomed us to dinner, right?
He was so like,
So I was definitely watching that. Star Search was a big one.
Yep.
And I loved this idea that you could be like plucked from oblivion and made into a star. And I didn't have aspirations for being like a singer or a dancer, or even there was a lot of stand-up on Star
acting,
Search.
Stand-up, dance, spokesmodels.
Oh, spokesmodels, Jesus Christ. It still made no sense to me. I feel like it was just because Ed McMahon like wanted in on that. Have we talked about
two
this?
people who were spokesmodels on this show.
Fuck you. Are you serious?
Yep.
I need to know more about this. Maybe now or later. But I loved the idea that you could be plucked from your ordinary life and all of a sudden have an extraordinary one because you happen to be good at something on television. So I love that.
But Star Search is what TV is now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Star Search is American Idol. Star Search was American Idol, Last Comic Standing.
Yeah.
It was all of the shows that for the last 20 years have been the huge blockbusters was Star Search.
But they were self-contained episodes, right? It wasn't like you were progressing
moved on
in
each week,
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh,
Quarterfinals, semifinals.
Oh,
Star
right.
Search
I forgot
88.
about that.
Yeah.
I forgot. Star Search 88. That was great. You did the voice. Yeah, I guess.
We were a few weeks ago. Shane Moss was staying with us a couple of months ago, and we made him. For some reason, we were watching old Star Search and Dance Fever episodes.
I never watched Dance Fever,
but one of the Dance Fever episodes, which was not an intentionally funny show, and it was a dance competition show. They were introducing this couple who was the competing, and this was the introduction. He's a costume character at SeaWorld, and she's 81 years old. It was this, like, clearly gay dude who was, like, 20-something, and he's just throwing this old lady around.
It's fucking fabulous.
But it was like, there's no better introduction I've ever heard in my life.
No better couple of people, just this partnership of people.
He's a costume character at SeaWorld, and she's 81 years old.
What are the costume characters at SeaWorld?
They would
it's got to be like an orca, right?
Well, they would have someone dressed like the whale.
But why? You don't want a costume character. You just want to see the real thing. That's why you're there.
Walking around. I don't know.
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds like a show I need to visit.
It's all on.
It's not even revisit.
On YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Okay. Writing it down.
Yeah, but those competition shows we always had. It's just funny they've taken over.
Well, we never. So I wouldn't have watched something like Star Search in a way where I was following the progress of a particular contestant. I think it was just like, if I happened to catch it, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
One of the things that would not have been obviously regular programming that immediately leapt out to me from July 4th, 1992 was the Guys and Dolls movie.
I didn't even know. So this is like the old movie of Guys and Dolls.
Marlon Brando, Frank Sinatra, Vivian Blaine, a bunch of other dudes playing gangsters. And Guys and Dolls was a really important musical, again, to my parents. And it became a really important one to me. So I had the soundtrack. The modern soundtrack was Peter Gallagher, I think Josie DeGuzman, I think it's not Faith Prince, it was Lorna Luft, and Nathan Lane.
Okay.
And I, again, like having limited access with, that's right. So again, having limited access to things, except what my parents kind of curated, I had the soundtrack, lots of musicals soundtracks. And I loved it. So we would have watched this movie together. I ended up in the musical in high school, and it was like one of the most important things I had ever done and probably have still ever done. And it was like the thing that my parents were the most proud of, that I had a lead role in Guys and Dolls. And it was very much a part of this is so bizarre, I know, but it's very much a part of my childhood experience with this musical.
No, I mean, it's something you can bond with your parents over. Mm-hmm. And it's also some capital to say, like, I could do that too.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense.
So we would have watched that for sure.
Yeah.
And again, maybe this is interesting to you because I don't have the same cultural touchstones as other people my age. So maybe this is good for you. I don't know. But it's absolutely, it would have taken up at least like an hour and a half of our day, and we would have watched it together as a family.
Yeah. I mean, well, they did program they knew July 4th. Most people are home in the morning or at night. And they would program stuff for families to watch. Yeah. So that's why you would get once a year, you would get stuff on holidays like Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music.
Yep.
They would show those on days when they knew families were going to watch stuff together. And you all wanted to watch one thing for a long time.
Yeah. What's crazy about Guys and Dolls and everything I've told you about my parents is that it is about gangsters and strippers. And there are 2 songs that are strip numbers, and yet it was fine. We were all watching it together, having a good time. And maybe it's because it was sort of like watered down stripping. There was no like what you would expect. It wasn't a showgirl situation. Yeah. It was tasteful stripping, but
tops only, honey.
Right. And not even then. They the big number, Take Back Your Mank, is all about these women, or the main character Adelaide, who is singing about how she was with a guy who was very rich and gave her a lot of presents, and then he wronged her, and so she wants him to take all the presents back. And it's sort of the premise, or it's the foundation for a striptease. So it's like, take back your mink, take back your pearls, take back all these clothes that you gave me, and they take off the clothes and the jewelry and the gloves to give back. But it's like a coat and jewelry and gloves, and that's it. And then they're just in sort of like very modest dresses underneath.
It's like the opposite of Orange Juice's Jones's The Rain.
I will believe you.
You gotta hear that song.
Okay.
That video.
Okay.
It's an 80s R&B song, and it's him just telling this girl that he saw her cheating on him, and he's like, I'm gonna take away everything.
Yeah.
Your $20,000 Lynx coat. Diamonds, I gave you everything.
Yes, it is the feminist version of that, and that I'm giving it back to you, fucker.
And then he goes, I saw you with that crumb cake.
Oh my God. This is like what my mom would sing to me, right?
Yeah.
I saw you with that crumb cake in a different way. So that's what we would have done on Saturday.
There is a very special Disney All-Star 4th of July celebration that night. I don't know if you saw who was hosting it.
Who?
John Ritter.
No way.
But good thing you're sitting down, because these are the special guests. 1992, Billy Ray Cyrus, and then it actually says in quotes, achy breaky heart, because people are like, who the hell is that?
Is that guy?
But then,
I'm saying fuck a lot. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I just go back and revoice everything.
Great.
But then the rest of the artists don't have the song they do in quotes, because they assume they're so famous we know who they are. Crisscross.
Oh my God.
Shanice.
Yeah.
Mary Chapin Carpenter, and Celine Dion.
What a beautiful tapestry of artists sharing the stage.
Shanice did I Love Your Smile. Yeah, we all know that. We don't need to go, who's this Billy Ray Cyrus? What song does
who
he
is
do?
that weirdo?
Yeah.
I was aware of John Ritter and Three's Company. I think that was another show where I stole episodes here and there.
Yeah, you shouldn't let kids watch Three's Company.
No, definitely not.
Mostly just because of the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, no one should have experienced the 70s.
Kids don't need to see horny Don Knotts. Kids don't need that.
Mrs. Roper had those fabulous caftans, though.
She did.
She's like a fashion icon now. Or maybe just to me, who I just want to live in comfort
It's
at
a
all
West
times.
Coast thing.
Yeah, it's probably a West Coast thing.
Are in.
They're so good. When I was pregnant, it's like all I wore, and then I kept all of them and continued to wear them. And
that's why you had a second kid.
I was going to say, that's why I have a second kid, so I could specifically live in Mrs. Roper comfort. We probably watched that, honestly, but I don't remember. So Sunday, July 5th, very much watched Zoobily Zoo, no question.
Ben Vereen.
It was like a melange of weirdos, like humans dressed as animals.
Welcome to you. It's Zoobily Zoo.
Zoobily Zoo, Zoobily Zoo, magic and wonder are waiting for you. I can do the whole thing. I'm not going to do that too.
Terrifying, by the way.
Terrifying, especially the cockatoo. Or cockatiel. Again, this is like a brontosaurus situation.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, they would. And I remember the opening number. I remember knowing who Ben Vereen was, which was very unusual for like a 12-year-old girl.
Musical theater guy.
Yeah, but
it actually wasn't, though, because he was on Webster.
He was?
He played, here's the weird thing, played Webster's uncle and also played Ben Vereen.
So the conceit was that Ben Vereen was Webster's uncle?
No. Oh. The conceit was Webster had an uncle, and also Ben Vereen existed in the universe of Webster. Two separate people that don't know each other, but occasionally both interact with Webster.
I feel like that happened a lot on Law & Order, where someone would play a character, and then they would be like, we like you. We're going to make you a series regular later, and just a totally different person. Yeah. That's really funny. I did not know that. So maybe people did know who he was. I remember I was so into Zoobily Zoo. And again, I was 12, so it was maybe I was too old for this, but it was like parent sanctioned. Absolutely. Parent sanctioned. But I wanted to be on that show, and I wrote a letter to, it was probably like the programming office. Like, I have no idea.
It's WLVI TV 56 here, so you probably wrote it to 56 because they had a kids club. Maybe
that's what it was. But I remember writing a letter to Ben Vereen and being like, I want to be on the show. How does that happen? And in a way, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've talked about this on the show before, but I know this from you having performed in Mortified. You wrote a letter to Ryan Lambert by way of writing to Martika.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I've talked about that on the show.
Great. That's all I want to talk about.
When Ryan Lambert guested.
That's right. Oh, God, those gloves, man. The gloves and the jacket.
I just talked to him the other day.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
Oh, I have questions. So many questions. Wait, did you read him the letter? Have you read him the letter?
Oh, yeah, no, he heard that whole episode of Mortified.
Oh, we did? How do you feel about it?
He was into it.
You should be.
Yeah.
Kids writing you fan mail, you should be into it.
Actually, a couple of years ago, I was at Denver Comic-Con, and Ryan Lambert and Andre Gower were there with me, and we all went out to dinner, and they were playing like an 80s station when we were at dinner, and Lambert goes, I'm like 90% sure I sang this on Kids Incorporated, and I went, oh, I'm 100% sure you did.
And that's when dinner ended.
No, and it was great. It was very funny.
Actually, I'm sure for an actor that's very flattering when someone has like a whole catalog of your every move.
Well, until Gower started pulling up clips of him singing U2 songs, and we all made fun of him.
Oh yeah, no, I think he still loved it though, and was secretly flattered. So I did I pulled a Ryan Lambert Martika, wherein I wrote to someone, and it was probably like
to Ben Vereen.
The Kids Club or whatever, and was like, please give this to Ben Vereen. And I like made an appeal to Ben Vereen that I should be on the show.
Did you get anything back?
No,
of course
not. I didn't even get like a poster.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking.
Some intern from Northeastern opened that at the WLVI headquarters.
Like, look at this bullshit.
Trash. The fuck's Ben Vereen?
This kid's a loser.
Yeah.
This 12-year-old girl, what a loser. So I would have watched that. I would have watched Long Ago and Far Away.
I don't know that. Is that on Sunday?
It was a series wherein James Earl Jones was the host. It was a little like Masterpiece Theater for children.
I see.
He was sitting in like an armchair in a room that had been sort of done up to look like he was sitting among this beautiful night sky. And he would sort of serve as the introduction to like a production of a children's fairy tale.
Would it be like animated or a live action thing?
I think it was mostly live action. Maybe there was some animation.
So it was like fairy tale theater.
Yes, which is also on my list. Yes. Or like Masterpiece Theater, wherein, you know, you have this host, this very articulate, like regal host who, like, you know, helps you kind of segue into. But
also makes you go, this is quality television,
right? Oh, the James Earl Jones, highbrow.
Yeah.
So I would have watched that. It's funny that you mentioned Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, because I wrote down Shelley Duvall's Bedtime Stories, which was on at 7:30 a.m. on Sunday for whatever reason.
That was her second series after Fairy Tale Theater.
Okay, and it was animated.
Yes.
And I thought, I don't know if I've watched this, but it made me think of Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, which I was very devoted to.
She did Tall Tales and Legends as well, and then did a thing called Rock and Rhyme.
I don't remember that.
Which was real weird. It was a pilot that she did for Disney Channel that was supposed to be a whole series, but Little Richard's in it. Oh. And it was set in a world of Mother Goose world, but all the people playing the characters were rock musicians.
That's fantastic. So, I feel this sounds familiar. I must have seen it.
Run DMC was in it. Okay. It was weird. But Fairy Tale Theater, which actually I have the whole series right next to you on the shelf, next to the hitchhiker
God.
There. It's right behind, it's right here. Is amazing, and
like petting it like
yeah,
it's a cat.
And it really went to some bizarre stories. Like they did like The Nightingale and like stuff that we never saw, Princess and the Pea, and like
she did an episode. I don't even remember the title of the story, but the whole premise was that this woman, this princess, at night would like sneak through a closet into a magical world where people just danced all night, and then she would return the next morning and be exhausted, and no one could figure out what the deal was, and it's because she was sneaking like out of the castle down into this magical dancing world.
That's kind of the plot of Wildfire. Yeah. Which was one of my favorite cartoons as a kid and was not for boys.
Not for boys. Not for boys.
Yeah.
Or it was San Francisco Bay Area.
That's true, yeah.
So I remember that so fondly, and again, that was like a thing that we were allowed to watch. And I feel like this is deep in the recesses of my brain, and you of all people might be able to answer this for me. There was a production of The Frog Prince that was live action, and
with
I feel
Robin
like it
Williams?
was I don't know, but I remember it was very early, either Kermit the Frog or Robin.
Oh, that
Frog,
is
right?
There is a Henson Frog Prince. Yep, with Robin.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. So I thought it was Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater was like an entree into what became it, but I can't.
They were not related.
Okay.
So there is a Muppet Frog Prince. Came out in the early 80s for HBO, I think.
Okay.
And Shelley Duvall, which was a Showtime show, did do the Frog Prince with Tatum O'Neal as the princess and Robin Williams as the frog.
You're right. You're right. I think I might be conflating the Frog Prince with, there was some, again, like live action, maybe one-off episode of there was a princess who couldn't talk, and she somehow was freed from this like spell by a frog. I don't know, but
that sounds like a fairy tale theater. I wonder what
doesn't it?
We'll flip through before you go.
Thank God.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
So Shelley Duvall would have been a part of my life
Box
in a way.
set's like $5, by the way.
Is it?
On Amazon? I recommend it. Yeah.
On it. Well, so in keeping with not being allowed to watch a lot of stuff, I didn't see The Shining, and obviously good reason for not seeing The Shining as a kid.
Well,
but
you just really escalated.
I'm going there because when I was in college at my undergrad program, I did film and media studies, and I took a class at the Eastman House in Rochester, New York, wherein there's just a whole archive of films, literally underground. They have a movie theater there where they show all these old movies on the big screen, and I had a class that was held there. Isabella Rossellini was in the audience one day. She just popped by to be like, I want to watch this on a big screen.
She was at a show at IB I did once.
Really?
Yeah.
She gets all over the place. I just, what a treat to look over and be like, hey girl, what's up? What's up, Iz?
What's up, Bella?
Sup, Bella? So I took a class, it was a film theory class, and the first day, the professor said, okay, for this class, we're going to watch the same movie every week for the whole semester, but in a different way. We'll watch it in black and white. Sometimes you'll just listen to it. We'll do a class where we just watch the first half of it, and then we'll watch a second movie to kind of compare the two. And the film he picked was The Shining. So I have seen an entire semester's worth of weekly Shining
of
screenings.
Shelley Duvall being terrorized?
It was alarming and eye-opening for me because I'd only known her as the hostess of Fairy Tale Theater, and then I was like, this is it was kind of like Olivia from Sesame Street making the transition to 227.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're like, you're a person.
She was also a musical theater person.
Oh, that's right, she was. I feel like I'm spending a lot of time on non-television things. I heard you say we're wrapping up, and I was like, I have so far to go.
We have to do a part 2 at some point.
Oh, that would be great. I'm just trying to get to Monday because
yes, let's go Monday. Let's get there.
The whole reason I wanted to be on the show, besides getting the chance to talk to you for a long time, is I want to talk about Swan's Crossing.
Let's talk about Swan's Crossing.
So much. Swan's Crossing
teenage soap
was a sexual awakening for me in a way that nothing else was. And when you consider everything else that was on TV, it's really surprising that this is it. So if you look in the TV guide, you will see kind of like before you read the description of one of the shows, it was the Disney thing where it was like John Ritter's hosting, Billy Ray Cyrus, blah, blah. If you find a listing for Swan's Crossing, you will see around it detailed descriptions of every other show. And Swan's Crossing, it just says teenagers. That's it. It just says teenagers. It was a teenage soap opera. It aired every day, every weekday, I think from like June to September. It had a very limited run.
It was less than a season.
And it was it made up like magical place, not magical like actual magic, but just
it was like a seaside town kind of thing. Was that it? Was the town was Swan's Crossing?
Yes, the town was Swan's Crossing, a fictional like idealized world wherein teenagers had parents, but the parents were sort of had secondary storylines. But it was very dramatic. Obviously, it was a soap opera. So one of the main characters was Sarah Michelle Gellar. It was her first role. People think it was All My Children. It was Swan's Crossing. Mm-hmm. And she played the daughter of the town's mayor. They were super wealthy, and they lived next door to her mom's like political nemesis. And he had a son whose name on the show, Garrett Booth.
He was the handsome kid, and he was weird looking though, right?
He had like skater hair.
Yeah.
They full Pyramus and Thisbe this. The parents were enemies. They built a literal wall between their homes, and Garrett and Sydney was her name, had like a torrid secret romance through a hole in the wall. It was Pyramus and Thisbe like ripped off. And so that was like one of the main storylines of the show. And then you had this girl, Callie, whose dad, they were like the working class, like they lived on a boat, or her dad was like some sort of boat worker.
I remember horses.
There were a lot of horses. It was like a horse lifestyle of the show. There was like an equestrian girl. There was a girl who wanted to be a singer, so she sang the opening theme song of the show, and then she always had a show at like their ripoff version of the Max. And then there was Jimmy Clayton, played by Devin Doherty. He was like the school rebel or whatever. He was the bad guy. Yeah. He had a leather jacket, obviously. I think he and Callie ended up getting like matching leather jackets. He had a motorcycle. I was like, something just literally opened inside my body the first time I saw him, and I was obsessed with him. So I was able to watch. Did you notice how I just came alive?
Yeah. She literally jumped out of the chair.
I jumped out of the chair in delight and hormones, a fit of hormones. So I was able to watch Swan's Crossing because it was on at 3:30.
Right after school.
Right after school. And usually my mom was either going to pick my brother up at school or taking him to some kind of practice, or she was like busy with getting ready for dinner. So I had this half hour where I could watch it. And Ken, we don't even need to go through the rest of the week because every day it was Swan's Crossing, because we weren't allowed to watch TV on school nights either. Right. It was the other thing. Swan's Crossing every day for this whole summer. And were
you talking to kids you knew about it? Like, were your friends watching it?
And I'm so glad you asked that. I must have been in the 8th grade when this was all happening. A new kid moved to school, which is a big deal when you grow up in a small town. Yeah. I grew up in a suburb of Boston, and it was like all the same kids from kindergarten on. So when a new person moved, it was a big deal. I had not seen him yet, but there was a lot of buzz about the new kid. And this girl in my class said he looked like Jimmy from Swan's Crossing.
Oh, shit.
I made it my mission to find him, identify him, spent years with a major crush on him, and that is the boy that I like seduced into dating me all through high school. And we hooked up, I'm not even joking, for 10 years after high school until I met my husband. And it's all premised on the fact that, like, hey, the new kid looks like Jimmy from Swan's Crossing. I don't know.
Do you want me to find Jimmy from Swan's Crossing so you can thank him?
I know where he is.
Or do you want to be mad at him?
Listen, I still, every once in a while, I'm like, what are you up to, Devin Doherty? And I think he's a musician, but it's not like, I don't know how successful a musician he is. And I honestly have not listened to his music because I'm a little afraid to shatter the illusion.
Yeah.
If you find him and have him on the show, I will come and sit in his lap, whether he wants me to or not.
I think we just discovered the sequel we're going to do here. Because you think I'm kidding, but I will make this happen.
I know you will. And that is one of the many reasons why I love you and cherish our friendship so much, because you would do anything for your friends, including find Devin Doherty for me.
Yeah.
And I will not be able to speak to him or look at him. I'll just have to sit in the corner. You can be like, this is my cousin who's got social anxiety.
It's my producer. I'll throw headphones on you.
Oh, yeah. And I could just look at a computer the whole time.
Doesn't have to be on.
That would be great. No, that's what I mean. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Okay. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like we've made a plan that makes me incredibly happy.
This is our cliffhanger.
Tune in next time for part 2.
Swan's Crossing.
No, Swan's Crossing was the reason why I ended up having not only my high school relationship, but having any it was like a domino effect of like the sexual person that I became. It was a literal
sexual awakening.
Literal sexual awakening. I saw the TV and was like, something just zinged in my body.
Yeah. For such a short-lived show that's not very well remembered. And it was an experiment where they were like, there's this transition time in the day between when soaps are on that moms watch and when the cartoons that little kids watch and then the news. So let's try to do something in the middle there because there wasn't a lot of shows for teenagers.
Yeah.
And the reason the producers of that show had worked on 2 Australian shows. So Neighbours and Home and Away, which was a sort of a seaside beach teenage soap opera. Both of those were on daily.
Okay.
So they had a good amount of hit with that in Canada as well. So they were like, let's try it. So Swan's Crossing was their attempt to sort of bring that to the U.S., and it was a huge bomb. And then the second time they tried to do it was a Canadian co-production that Nickelodeon did called 15. That Ryan Reynolds' first role was on.
Oh, no way.
And it was a half-hour drama soap for teens that didn't even last a year.
What's so interesting now is that now there's so many soapy shows for teens that are doing amazing. Like Riverdale is something that I enjoy teenage soap operas a lot, probably because I have this like fondness in my heart and other body parts for Swan's Crossing. And I think it would need to be recalibrated in a way because it was like a little too cheesy or it wasn't cheesy enough. But I think it would, like today, if Swan's Crossing were on, it would be a completely different experience for viewers. And I think it would have legs to have multiple seasons.
Absolutely. Well, what they hit on was that we can do these soaps for teens, but the model aren't daily soaps.
Yeah.
The model are nighttime soaps.
Yes.
The model is Dynasty. That's the model we'll use.
Yeah.
And that's what worked. And the thing that Aaron Spelling was the one who cracked that with 90210.
Of course
that was the first thing.
Another show I was not allowed to watch.
Yeah, but it made sense. Let's do the cheap soap thing.
Yeah.
And kids were like, this sucks.
You know what, though? When you're a teenager, your life is so soapy and dramatic, and things that to adults now seem like they have relatively low stakes, to a teenager is everything, right? Like, when you're a kid, that forbidden relationship, for whatever reason that it's forbidden, is all-consuming, but so is your math test, and so is, like, the Gulf War. And I say this knowing, so one of the other things I do besides a writer is I produce a stage show called Mortified, or I'm one of the producers of it, wherein adults read on stage from their actual teenage diaries. And so I spent a lot of time with people going through their teenage artifacts and sort of creating performance pieces out of them and coaching them how to perform. I spent a lot of time in teenage journals. And I can tell you, you know, for example, any of us who were like teenagers or preteens in the 90s, the Gulf War, obviously the first sort of like televised war, was really on everybody's minds in the same way that the dance was, getting your period was, you know, whether or not a boy liked you. And it was just, I feel like the stakes of things that are not on equal ground at all when you're a teenager can all be equal or like close to equal because your world is so small.
Everything's new for the first time. Yes. Everything's life or death. But the interesting thing to me is that those soaps, like Swan's Crossing, which for a cheesy show, tried to reflect sort of quote unquote real teenage things, which, you know, Sweet Valley High, like and kids don't want that.
I guess
because
that's true.
They don't feel like what it feels like to them. They seem trivial when they watch them. So when you see shows like Riverdale and Supernatural and Sabrina and those shows, by bringing in that supernatural element or bringing in these major stakes elements like Buffy did, it makes the show feel like what they feel like with their problems, which are huge. Whereas when you reflect their actual problems, it seems stupid to them.
Or it needs to be done in a way that you can like actually one-to-one identify with. I wonder if that was the problem with Swan's Crossing, is that in some ways it was really soapy and fun to watch, but in other ways you couldn't identify with these characters, right? So like a forbidden teen romance, not being allowed to date someone that you really want to fall in love with, I think can be relatable because maybe you're not allowed to date, for example, or maybe you want to date someone that your parents don't approve of for whatever reason. But not in an old-fashioned,
let's build a brick wall way.
That's the thing, is that I feel like it was so over the top with the details of these things that the kids just couldn't relate. So I remember Brittany Daniel played a character who was, again, like the new girl in town, very like beautiful, blonde, like super rich, and she had an elevator that went up to her room. And I remember being like, I'm so fascinated by this, but also you've lost me, because already you're like this willowy, beautiful, rich blonde girl, and I don't see myself in that at all. But you have like an elevator in your room; it's too much.
Well, there's a balance you have to strike between wish fulfillment and too much.
Yeah,
where kids can go, I could see myself having that.
Yep.
Which 90210 did perfectly.
Yep.
And well, that's just not. What is that?
But I think the problem is when you're kind of nestled in the middle, like Swan's Crossing was. Like Riverdale is so over the top. They have like murderers and then like cults and more murderers and like characters who are all amazing singers, right? And they just kind of like have opportunities to sing all the time. Like I think it is over the top in a way that kids are on board with, and I feel like Swan's Crossing like couldn't decide what it was.
Yeah, you need to amp it up to make it feel like they feel.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to make it way over the top.
Yeah.
Because teenagers feel over the top all the time.
All the time. Yeah. Hormones, everything is new, like you were saying. You're in a world, most people are in a world wherein they've been with the same people since they were teenagers, the same peers. So you have soapy dynamics with the kids around you already.
Right.
And you have like grudges and enemies and people you have a crush on and people that are like your diehard best friends, so it feels like a soap opera. And I criticize Swan's Crossing in a way that comes from a place of deep love because it was such a formative show for me. And I mean, obviously it was like one of the only shows that I had access to, and so it takes up a lot of space in my media brain because that was the thing. But also it translated for me into a real life experience that was a formative relationship that continued for way longer than it should have.
So they'll always be intrinsically linked for you.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So Devin Doherty, if you are listening, you need to know. Or when you are here, I'm sitting in the same chair that he might sit in.
That's right.
Just tell him that like I moved my butt around
Oh no,
for him.
you'll tell him. You're gonna show him.
It will make me so happy.
We're getting Devin, and we're gonna do this again.
He was, for me, like the person whose picture I wanted to hang on the wall. And probably...
What stopped you?
I don't know if he had... I mean, he certainly didn't have the same, like...
He wasn't a JTT.
He wasn't a JTT. He wasn't a Leo, like a young Growing Pains Leo who I did know about. He wasn't a Kirk Cameron. He wasn't a New Kid. Like, I imagine there was no... like Tiger Beat spread dedicated to Swan's Crossing. Maybe
if there is, they'll let me know.
Please do. And if you have artifacts you want to share, even just pictures of, I'd love to know. But I'm sure there was not the same like fervor over that show that I personally felt, certainly. But there probably weren't opportunities to hang that stuff up. And plus, my parents would have ripped it down immediately.
Plus, also like fan culture was not quite. It was an infrastructure for actual soaps with those digests and all that stuff, and for teenage stuff, it just didn't exist. So,
well, there was like Tiger Beat magazine or 16, I think Teen Beat, but it was like highly curated,
paid.
Was
Miller
it?
Told me it was mostly paid.
That makes
PR
sense
stuff
to me, but it was
stunts.
like it was really curated material that was watered down. I remember, so I wasn't allowed to read any of those magazines, but I had a friend who was deeply into New Kids and had like a bunch of the magazines. And it was like interviews with Donnie Wahlberg about like, what's your favorite drink? Like, what do you put on your pancakes in the morning? Like just very vanilla, benign questions. And so you didn't have access to like the information you really wanted about someone you had a crush on. Certainly not in the same way you do now. And you never have direct access to them.
And information you don't even want about them.
Right. I don't care that you like milkshakes. Like, it's fine. Maybe if it was Devin Doherty telling me about the milkshakes he liked, I would have been into it.
He likes milkshakes on pancakes. That's the weird thing.
God. I mean, so do I. Don't tell my mom. But so I think that there was, for me, this like... he was unattainable in a way because he was a television actor, but also because no one was putting the Swan's Crossing kids out in the world. So
it was an obscure show on for a short amount of time in a window of TV that just belonged to you.
Yep.
So it makes perfect sense. And that was a stumble upon. That's the thing where if you could watch that whenever you wanted, it wouldn't have been the same.
Definitely not. I know that you can watch it now. It's not on any...
There's some on YouTube.
Yeah, okay. Some on YouTube. Maybe Hulu. I don't remember, but I'm afraid to watch it because I don't want it to be spoiled in my brain. Because
have your son watch it.
Okay, good idea.
He'll act him out for you.
He would. He's a very charismatic little person.
And then you'll know.
That's good. But not the Jimmy parts because I don't want my son...
No, that's a weird Oedipal thing.
I mean, I can't even talk about it.
Just cut out Jimmy.
Just cut out this whole thing.
Yeah.
I want to revisit it, but I don't. I want it to remain suspended in my memory as like this sexy special thing, and I don't want to ruin that.
Here's what I'll do for our cliffhanger.
Can't wait.
I'll rewatch it.
Okay.
And then like your parents did for Movies for You. And I'll decide if it's appropriate for you to watch or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That is an act of friendship that just goes above and beyond.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
I love you, man. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Absolute pleasure.
There you are. That is Sara. Please buy her book, Let's Never Talk About This Again. And you can talk about it, though. It's not like Fight Club, that book. So tell everyone about the book, Let's Never Talk About This Again. And you should read it and reread it because it is very good. June 7th, it is officially out. So pre-order it, get a hard copy, get an electronic copy. There's an audio version. There's so many ways you can consume this book. And again, just a reminder, I recorded this pre-pandemic. So she was at the house before everybody was getting a disease. So again, don't give me crap about that. But if you want to give me crap about something else, you can do so at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@icanread.com. We also have the Patreon, patreon.com/tvguidancecounselor, putting up more secret menu content on there. So please request what you'd like to see. I love hearing from you guys, or what you don't like to see. If there's stuff that you're like, don't ever post this again, I would like to hear that as well. Still working on remote episodes, so we're chugging along here, and we'll be here each and every week with a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
Feety versus footy pajamas.
Yes, that's right.
That's why we're here.